We have a beautiful love and wise story today. It's called Love in the Little Teapot. In a quiet little town, where the loudest sound was the neighbor's rooster with terrible singing skills, there lived an elderly couple, Grandpa Depp and Grandma Heard. They were famous in the neighborhood, not for being rich, not for being adventurous, but for always being together. Rain or shine, they walked side by side, sharing a single umbrella so small that it forced them to huddle close. In the evenings, they could be seen sipping tea on their creaky wooden porch. Chatting about everything from the price of vegetables to whether clouds looked more like sheep or dumplings that day. Their life was simple. They didn't have much money, but they had each other, and for them, that was enough. 50 years ago, Grandpa Depp wasn't a grandpa at all. He was just Johnson, a shy young man who worked at the town's tea shop. He was tall, but always slouched as if apologizing for taking up space. Grandma Heard, back then, was Amy, the tea shop's most regular customer. She came every morning to buy a cup of jasmine tea before heading to the market. One rainy morning, Amy forgot her umbrella. Seeing her shiver at the door, Johnson hesitated for a moment, then offered her his. She smiled, a smile that made him feel as if spring had arrived early. She asked him, "Then what about you?" He replied, "I'll just run back. Tea boys are faster than rain." He wasn't. He ended up soaked like a steamed bun dropped into soup. But that day, Amy promised herself she'd find a way to return the kindness. From then on, she started bringing an extra steamed bun for him every morning. Johnson pretended not to expect it, but if one morning she was late, he'd sneak glances at the door until she arrived. The town teased them, saying even the teapot knew they were falling in love. Johnson wasn't good with big speeches. He didn't kneel under cherry blossoms or write romantic poems. One evening, as they were walking by the river, he simply said, "You drink tea every day. You might as well drink it with me for the rest of your life." Amy laughed until she cried. "Is that a proposal?" He scratched his head. "Well, yes." She thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but only if you promise never to drink whiskey first thing in the morning." Johnson smiled and said, "Yes. Can you also promise me that when you need to run to the bathroom, you actually go instead of staying in bed?" And that's how they started their lifelong tea-drinking partnership. Life wasn't always smooth. There were years when the harvest failed and food was scarce. There were winters when the cold crept into their bones, no matter how many blankets they piled on. But whenever things got hard, they helped each other through. When money was tight, Amy would make simple porridge and say cheerfully, "At least it's warm." Johnson would nod and scoop an extra spoonful into her bowl, pretending he wasn't hungry. When Amy caught a fever one winter, Johnson stayed up all night, brewing ginger tea and wiping her forehead with a damp cloth. His hands were rough from years of work, but his touch was as gentle as falling snow. Neighbors said they're like two little fish in a drying pond, sharing the last drops of water so both can survive. That's exactly what the phrase means today. When life is difficult, instead of leaving each other to struggle alone, you stay and help each other through it. Of course, even the most loving couples argue. Their biggest fight was about a teapot. One day, Johnson accidentally chipped Amy's favorite porcelain teapot, the one they had used since their wedding day. Amy was furious. "This teapot has been with us for 30 years. How could you be so careless?" Johnson looked guilty. "It was an accident. I was just trying to make tea before you woke up." She huffed. "Well, you woke me up anyway." They didn't speak for a whole afternoon. But that evening, Johnson quietly fixed the crack with a special glue and painted a tiny flower over it. When Amy saw it, she sighed. "It's ugly, but it still works," he said softly. Like us, she burst out laughing and forgave him instantly. As the years rolled by, their hair turned silver, their backs bent, and their steps slowed. But their habit of sharing tea never changed. In the mornings, Amy would boil water while Johnson set out the cups. They would sit together, sipping slowly, as if they had all the time in the world. Sometimes, younger couples in town would ask them, "What's your secret to staying together so long?" Johnson would shrug. "We just kept pouring tea for each other," Amy would add. "And when life got bitter, we shared the cup." One spring afternoon, the sky suddenly darkened and rain poured down. Amy was on her way home from the market, and Johnson, now moving slower than before, grabbed the old umbrella and hobbled out to meet her. When they met halfway, she was already wet from the rain, but she smiled when she saw him. "You shouldn't have come out," she scolded gently, "and let you get wet alone," he said, holding the umbrella over her while the rain soaked his own shoulder. They walked home, just like they had 50 years ago. The town's rooster crowed from someone's porch, and Amy laughed. "This reminds me of the day you gave me your umbrella," Amy said. Johnson chuckled. "This time, I didn't have to run." One winter, Johnson's health began to fail. He spent more time in bed, and Amy spent more time by his side. One cold morning, she brought him a steaming cup of jasmine tea. "Still my favorite," he whispered, taking a sip. She smiled. "I know." He held her hand and said, "When I'm gone, will you still drink tea?" She squeezed his hand tightly. "Yes, and I'll imagine you're drinking the other cup." That winter, Johnson passed away peacefully, with a faint scent of jasmine in the air. In the years that followed, Amy continued their morning tea ritual. She would pour 2 cups, placing one in front of the empty chair. Neighbors sometimes asked why she still did it. She'd smile and say, "He might be gone, but we still share our tea." That's how we promised it would be. And so, the little teapot, chipped but still working, remained on the table. A quiet witness to decades of love, patience, and the meaning of our love and wise story today. Moral of the story: the phrase "to fish in a dry pond" teaches us that love is not just about grand gestures or perfect days. It's about staying together in hard times, sharing what little you have, and finding warmth in each other's presence. Sometimes, the greatest romance is simply pouring tea for someone, day after day, year after year. The end.